That feeling when you look down at your phone, you see literally hundreds of friends, followers, and contacts, but you still feel this deep, unshakable sense of just being completely alone? Well, you're not the only one. It's a modern epidemic of disconnection. Today we're going to unpack the science, the psychology, and the sociology behind exactly why this is happening to so many of us. So let's just dive right in.
There's this really incredible observation from researcher Sherry Turkle. She points out this dangerous illusion created by all our digital habits. You know how the philosopher Descartes famously said, "I think, therefore I am"? Well, we've kind of traded that for "I share, therefore I am." We are constantly broadcasting our thoughts out into the void just to feel alive, to feel seen. But here's the paradox. This constant performative connection usually just leaves us feeling completely isolated. It's like we're treating human connection as a transaction, and it is literally starving us of true intimacy.
Here's our roadmap for the explainer today. First, we'll look at the biology of the social brain. Then, we'll contrast modernity with our evolution. Third, the digital connection paradox. Fourth, we'll break down isolation, loneliness, and solitude. And finally, we'll wrap up with actual strategies for real connection.
All right, Section 1, Biology of the Social Brain. Let's understand our wiring. So, take a look at the highlighted region on this brain scan. Specifically, it's called the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. Researchers using fMRI scans have found something absolutely mind-blowing. The exact same region of your brain that lights up when you experience physical pain, like, say, touching a hot stove. That same exact spot activates when you experience the emotional pain of social rejection and isolation. No way, right? But it's true. Your brain literally processes loneliness as physical damage.
What this really means is that loneliness, it isn't some personal failure. Actually, scratch that. It's a brilliant evolutionary survival mechanism. Think about it like physical hunger. Hunger is just an alarm bell telling you to seek food so you don't starve, right? Well, loneliness is a biological alarm bell telling you to go seek out your tribe. For early humans, wandering off alone meant certain death by predators or the elements. So loneliness is literally your body's way of trying to keep you alive.
But here's where we hit a massive speed bump. For millions of years, we evolved as these highly cooperative tribal creatures. Fast forward to the last 300 years, and we've seen this massive philosophical shift, something researchers actually call the cult of the individual. We started prioritizing rugged individualism, self-reliance, and standing alone as the ultimate ideals. Basically, we're trying to run a 300-year-old social software program on a multi-million-year-old biological hard drive. And folks, it's crashing.
Which brings us to Section 2, Modernity versus our evolution, how we're fighting our own wiring.
30%. That is the number of Americans currently doing some type of gig work outside of a traditional job. Our modern workplace has become super atomized. Instead of making a lifelong commitment to a single career with this tight-knit group of colleagues, our jobs today are increasingly impermanent, transient, and physically detached. We're losing that built-in, everyday social network that the traditional workplace used to just hand us.
And technology has completely changed even our most basic social rituals. I mean, think about meal delivery services like Uber Eats or Grubhub. They're incredibly convenient, for sure, but they also let us eat at our desks, skip the grocery store entirely, and totally avoid the break room. The result? Americans now eat over 50% of their meals entirely by themselves. The communal table is literally disappearing from our daily lives.
To understand this shift, sociologist Robert Putnam uses these two great Yiddish terms for how we built social capital: moshers and schmoozers. Moshers are the ones doing the formal stuff. They go to town halls, join clubs, volunteer. Schmoozers? They handle the informal stuff, hosting dinner parties, grabbing a drink with a friend. While formal moshing has been dropping for decades, the way we schmooze is fundamentally changing shape too. We're moving away from in-person gatherings straight into digital text threads.
Moving on to Section 3, the digital connection paradox. Connected, but alone. When you break this down across different age groups, a pretty clear paradox emerges. For young adults, digital tools actually tend to exacerbate loneliness. Why? Because of passive scrolling and the constant pressure to perform this perfect life online. It leads to massive digital fatigue and serious FOMO. But look at older adults. While they definitely face tech barriers and privacy fears, if they can overcome them, the internet acts as a crucial lifeline to distant family, especially when physical mobility is an issue. So tech isn't all bad. It's a highly context-dependent paradox. Because we are biologically starving for connection while being physically isolated, we naturally try to fill that void. We anthropomorphize our pets, basically treating them like human roommates, or we form these one-sided parasocial relationships with TV characters, podcast hosts, and online influencers. We feel like we really know them, right? But they don't know us. It's a synthetic substitute for the real flesh and blood social bonds our brains are just desperately craving.
So, let's take a collective breath here. How do we actually survive this? How do we navigate a world that feels economically and technologically designed to keep us apart? Well, to find the cure, we first need to make absolutely sure we're properly diagnosing the disease.
Section 4. Isolation, loneliness, and solitude. Let's define our terms.
Okay, so objective social isolation is a physical state. You literally have very few people around you. But subjective loneliness, that is an emotional state. This is exactly why you can have a massive social network, be surrounded by people at a crowded party, and still be absolutely starving for true emotional connection. Loneliness is really just the gap between the connection you desire and the connection you actually have. And we desperately need to destigmatize being alone by separating it from the idea of solitude. Loneliness is a painful state of disconnection, where your brain is hyper-vigilant to social threats. Solitude, on the other hand, is a peaceful, deliberately chosen state. In solitude, you are physically alone, yes, but you are emotionally intact. It's a sovereign, totally necessary space for self-reflection. If we can't tolerate solitude, we just end up using other people as spare parts to soothe our own anxiety.
And guys, the stakes here are incredibly high. When that acute, evolutionary alarm bell of loneliness never gets turned off, it becomes chronic. It functions as a continuous psychological stressor that increases your allostatic load, which is basically the wear and tear on your physical body. Clinical researchers have found that chronic isolation physically impairs your immune system, raises your blood pressure, and significantly increases the risk of cognitive decline and dementia. It's a real brain health issue.
All right, bringing it home with Section 5, Strategies for Real Connection.
First, let's look at some clinical interventions. Ironically, technology can actually be part of the cure here. Internet-based cognitive behavioral therapy, or ICBT, has been shown to effectively reduce chronic isolation. Why? Well, lonely individuals often develop these negative social biases. They kind of expect rejection, so they withdraw even further. ICBT, along with mindfulness training, helps rewire those maladaptive thoughts. It prepares people to safely re-enter group-based physical activities without that overwhelming fear.
We're also seeing this really fascinating shift in how we approach work. Remember that gig economy stat from earlier? Well, the silver lining there is the rise of what's called the harmonic careerist. Younger workers are opting out of these single, monolithic careers that totally drain them. Instead, they're combining non-standard jobs to create flexibility and find deeper purpose. They're actively prioritizing meaning and community over just climbing a traditional corporate ladder.
But for all of us, the day-to-day fixes require some active behavior changes. Step 1. You've got to limit the passive, performative scrolling that drives all that digital fatigue. Step 2. Recognize those one-sided parasocial relationships and intentionally swap them out for face-to-face community building. And Step 3. Get out there and actually practice being a matcher and a schmoozer in the real world. Join a club, volunteer, or literally just invite a neighbor over for coffee. It takes effort, sure, but it is the biological medicine your body needs.
I absolutely love this quote from evolutionary biologist E.O. Wilson to kind of tie this whole thing together. He says, "We are obliged to make ourselves more than animated dust. We are literally wired by millions of years of evolution to be part of a tribe. We are spiritually and biologically driven to share a meaningful story together. We are not meant to be isolated, atomized individuals. We are meant to connect." So, I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought for today's explainer. The next time you have 5 minutes of quiet, what are you going to do? Will you reflexively reach for your phone to passively scroll and just numb the quiet? Or will you embrace that moment, finding peace in true solitude so that you are fully ready to connect with the real world around you? The choice is entirely yours.